Welcome to another video by Doc Econ. Today I want to talk about education, how to get it, why you would need it, why you might want to have it, and what are the avenues, how do you pay for it? So come along with me. First thing I want to do is share a personal story with you. I was able to get very little education, actually. In fact, I went to school and kind of drifted around. I graduated from high school, went to school for about a year and a half at a junior college. Kind of drifted around trying to figure out what I wanted to be in life. And frankly, when I came straight out of high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and eventually ended up with leaving school and going and just getting whatever jobs that I could with my high school diploma, even though I had gone to junior college for a period of time, still didn't have an associate's degree. So I worked my way into various disciplines, got a very good job with a commercial insurance company, became a field underwriter and wrote insurance for things like automobile dealers and motorcycle and RV dealers. So that was a good occupation until that particular company overextended themselves and started canceling the more risky books of business, which 40% of my book of business was motorcycle dealers, and that was one of them. So my income dramatically declined, and I left that company and tried to continue with other companies in the insurance business, and it just didn't mix with me personally. I wasn't really a great salesperson. So in time, I shifted and went into IT, and without a degree back then, you could really do quite a bit, actually. Got a couple freelance jobs coding, ended up working with a sales organization, worked myself into management, got up to a fairly good income again. But the problem is they went through some layoffs and decided to downsize their management team. So away I went, trying to figure out what to do again. At that point in time, I hit a sustained period of unemployment because I had had a very good income in that management team, but had no education behind it. So in other words, I didn't have a degree that would support the amount of income I had made. And there was the conundrum. So that is where I had to make the decision to go for more education. And of course, the first step was finish that associate's degree, get it done so that I could move on to my bachelor's degree. So let's take a look and break that down. For me, in my 30s, by that time, I had gotten to the point where I really didn't have much of a choice. I wasn't physically strong. I couldn't go out and, be a construction worker or get into any of those high-paid positions where I was managing in that area. I didn't have experience that way. I couldn't get back into IT because by that time IT had developed to the point where most of them were starting to require information systems degrees or information technology degrees, computer engineering degrees, those kinds of things. And the problem is there were so few of those programs that even though I had a good GPA, University of Washington would let me into the university, but wouldn't let me into the College of Computer Engineering. That required a 3.8 GPA, and I didn't have that. So good, but not that good, so to speak. So what does it mean to get education at that point? Well, for me, it was almost a no-brainer. Either get education or try to keep making ends meet and going from one job and losing it to the next job and losing it into the next job. And, how long would that cycle continue before, we just ended up living off the government, which was not something I really wanted to do. So let's look at the choices that can be made at that point. I feel that I was a little better prepared to go to school because I had been down the road a little ways. I knew what I was wanting to do at that point, not like 10 years prior when I left school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of had some focus now. I knew I wanted to work with computers. I knew I wanted to go forward in that industry. So let's look. So if we look at annual pay by degree, what we see is the farther up you go, Like, for example, here I was sitting here with a high school diploma. Unemployment rate is an average of about 3.3% for the when this was taken in 2020. Less than a high school diploma, 5.4%. So just by getting, for example, an associate's degree, you cut your possibility of unemployment by half. Now, of course, every person's experience is unique, but as a broad category, only half of the people are unemployed that have an associate's degree that would be unemployed without a high school diploma. So at least stay in school, get your high school diploma at least. But getting an associate's degree, notice that you march up the salary range quite a bit, 50% higher here. 46,000 versus 30,000. So associate's degree is really the minimum nowadays. And most of the places that you apply for, basically what they're doing is sifting out their candidates by whether they have a degree or not. And so if you can't say that you've got a bachelor's degree, it gets pretty difficult just to get your feet in the door for any sort of job that requires any sort of technical skills. But the benefits of going from associates just to bachelor's is going from 46,000 average to a $64,000 income. And I think that that's pretty valuable. Now the next question is, do I go beyond that? Okay, I did. I've got my Ph.D. and I have enjoyed quite a bit higher income than this $97,000 average. That degree has opened doors for me that I could not have opened without that degree. So for me, it made sense. At this point, though, there are some costs. Going from a bachelor's to a master's and beyond gets fairly costly. So we'll come back to that here in a moment. So let's look at what happens to a monthly income, for example. If I go to monthly, I'm going to go to the website and look at that particular one here because we have an interactive chart here. So you can see the monthly income right around, 650, weekly earnings at about $626. Where a doctoral degree, you can expect weekly earnings in the 1900 range. And of course, that makes a lot of difference. Professional degrees like your lawyers, attorneys, specialists in various disciplines. And then there's your master's degrees, your MBAs, and your masters of education and people like that. So you see the weekly incomes continue to rise until they top off at the terminal degree or doctorate, as you would see. Now, notice the unemployment goes the opposite direction. Unemployment for 2022 is where this was taken. Unemployment rate with less than a high school diploma rose up to 8.3%. Now, it was at 5.4 on the previous chart. With a high school diploma, it goes down and it continues to go down. People with doctoral degrees have, very little chance of being unemployed. So you see that in general, now I am talking about in general, because you have to apply this to you eventually. In general, you find that more education yields more income, less chance that you'll be unemployed, and more opportunity for growth in those areas. So let's put this away and let's look at, there's some contrary information out there too. In fact, this particular article here by Howard Wang of Convoy Investments, now he's looking at the investment perspective. Now, that's a very different perspective than if you're sitting at your dinner table and wondering whether or not you're going to be able to pay the bills or not. That's quite a different perspective. And basically his idea here is that inflation, or labor inflation, wage inflation, is caused a lot by the fact that there's a lot of people with higher degrees, and those people with higher degrees are demanding certain kinds of jobs. They're not willing to go down to the blue-collar jobs that require less education. In fact, most of the time, people who are trying to hire for blue-collar jobs or jobs that don't require education don't want somebody with a bunch of education because they generally tend to leave when another opportunity comes. So it's tough when you get a lot of people with a lot of education, according to his perspective, because that perspective means that There are too many people taking those higher paying jobs and not enough people to fill the lower paying jobs, mostly in the service sector in that case. So he says, as a result, we're seeing layoffs in certain sectors like tech and finance, while other blue-collar service sectors are struggling to find enough workers. And that's the whole point he's making. But that still doesn't change the fact that people with higher education demand a higher wage and are generally less unemployed than people in the blue-collar sector. So what I'm suspecting by this is that there's kind of a donut hole where people with low education can't get the jobs in the middle where they're trying to hire, and people with high education, masters and higher, aren't being able to fill those jobs because they don't want them. Okay, so there's probably a donut hole in the middle. We're definitely not talking about flipping burgers at Burger King. So we're talking about, some median skill education there that is needed. So how do you pay for it? Gosh, you go and you look at a website and they tell you what the cost of education is at any of the universities out there, and you get sticker shock. It's very, very difficult. Well, first thing, don't feel like you've got to get an education at a high-class institute. You don't have to go to Harvard. You don't have to go to Yale. You don't have to go to these exclusive private universities. You can go to a community college, and community college, if you get a Pell Grant, you will be able to pay for it and then some. It'll pay for your tuition. It'll pay for your books. It'll pay for your daycare. It'll pay for the things that you need to survive and have a part-time job along with going to school and be able to continue to make ends meet. That is the best, by far the best way. Now, for you students out there that are still living with your parents, if your parents earn too much money, Pell Grants aren't available to you. That is a big challenge. That was part of the challenge with me staying in school. And when I became older, of course, that wasn't a problem. So emancipate yourself, go get your own income. If you're young, go get your own income for a couple of years where you declare yourself as a dependent on your income taxes. And a couple of years into that process, you become qualified to get a Pell Grant and you can go to school. So it might take you an interim little bit of time if you don't have parents' money to go to school and your parents still make too much but not enough to pay for you going to school. The Pell Grant would be available to you after a couple of years. Now, after you get done with the associate's and bachelor's level, Pell Grants aren't available. They don't continue with you past the bachelor's program. So then you're into the area of student loans. And frankly, I would avoid student loans like the plague. It's so easy to get a student loan. And it's so easy to pocket the difference between the tuition and books and the amount of the money you can get with a student loan. And when it becomes easy to do that, we get tempted to go ahead and put that in our bank account, and slowly it funnels itself into other expenses. And then after you graduate, you start paying back your student loans, and all of a sudden, $300 to $400 to $600 of your income every single month goes to pay your student loan debt. Avoid it at all possible. There are a lot of different programs at universities that you can work to pay for your schooling. You can get other jobs just barely off campus where you can continue to pay for your living expenses and maybe get modest student loans just to pay for the tuition and books. In any case, try to avoid a student loan while you go through this process so that when you've gotten your hard-earned education, you could actually spend the increase of money that you get by getting one of those good jobs after it's all done. So that's the student loan route. So we've talked about why you might want to get an education. What we haven't really talked about is there's other avenues of education. Instead of the bachelor's degree, the master's degree, the doctoral degree, you can go for a trade school. And, frankly, trade schools, if they fit your personality and your desires, can get you into some very good paying jobs. Whether you want to be a welder or a plumber or construction worker or contractor of any sort, you can get into those trades and then work into a management position and possibly even own your own company eventually. A lot of different ways. Tech schools that teach computer programming skills and get you into areas like that. So you can do that without necessarily having to get into the bachelor's, master's type of a program. And if that fits for your needs, education is important. So what you need to do is decide on what kind of education really works for you. You saw and you heard my journey through the educational process. I made decisions based on my personality and my abilities, and everybody is different and needs to approach that on their own. And so I wish you all the luck in your education journey. I hope this video has helped. If it has, please hit that like button. And I hope you'll subscribe and come along with me as I continue to grow the channel. Thanks. Talk to you later.